because of popular demand, we're going to do this video on how to make bread. I've been making bread here at work. It takes me only about 10 minutes in the morning to set it up, and I've been doing this for a long time. So it's really a fun and easy recipe, and so I'll go ahead and show you what we do. First of all, you want to make sure you clean your bowl real good, you get all the old debris out, and then you need to get some water. And I'm going to make a 1 pound loaf, so what I'm going to do is get a cup of water, but because this water cooler gets the water so cold, I put part hot and part cold. So it kind of makes it a warm water solution. So it's 1 cup of water. Put that in there. And then I dry out the cup because I'm using the same cup to do the flour. So you got to dry it out real good because you don't want the flour stuck on your cup. Okay, and I do a 50-50 recipe here. The next item of flour, whole wheat and white flour. And this is salt. I just put it in a sandwich bag, and I get 1 teaspoon of salt. I put that in the solution, and then I mix it up into the water. Just kind of roll it back and forth and get it so that you see it dissolve. It's very important that it dissolves in the water. My wife doesn't dissolve hers. She just lets it do it naturally, but I think it's better to get it dissolved first. And so, okay, now that's all dissolved. Now I'm going to put the flour in. The flour is very simple. Actually, I do a 50-50 mix. And I like to put my flour in Ziploc bags. It's easier to manage. And so I'm going to get, actually, yeah, a kind of rounded top thing of packed flour, not real tight, but just, that's what I put in. That's my first scoop. And I found bread machines don't do well if you do more than a 50-50 mix of whole wheat and white. I mean, a lot of people just prefer all white, but I don't. I like the whole wheat. I think that really gives it some body and something to eat. It smells good too. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put the second cup of flour in here, pat it down the middle a little bit. I'm going to take my finger right into the center and I'm going to make a little divot. You can kind of show that. And in that divot I'm going to put my yeast. Now I buy this yeast at Costco, and it doesn't really matter, but it's cheaper if you buy it by the pound rather than by the little packets. And so I I put about 3/4 a teaspoon of yeast and put it right down in the center. Okay, and then I just cover it up. And so if you do this and there's no water on the yeast, you can let this sit for hours before the bread machine comes on. So those of you that like to do delayed bread making, that's one way to do it. And so then now you just go ahead and take it over to the bread maker. And I don't sell bread makers, but this Breadman bread maker really is a good one. And I've had several through the years. I pop it in, I throw it over down, and I plug it in. Then, because of the 50-50 mix, you'll have to experiment. But I found on this machine I use the second setting, which is white light, and then the size of the loaf is 1 pound. So I go loaf size 1 pound. And now it tells me I have 3 hours from now I'll have bread. So I'm going to select that, whoop, go back to white light, and then start. Okay, so now I have 3 hours from now. I'll come back and I'll have a loaf of bread. I'll let it do its thing the rest of the day. That's all it took. I don't know how long it took on the video to explain all this, but the bread really smells good. In 3 hours you'll love to eat it. When the bread comes out, I like to take the loaf and wrap it in paper towel, and so that the moisture can leave but stays in the bread, and let it cool down before you slice into it. It makes nicer slices and makes great sandwiches. Hi, we're back now. It's 3 hours later, and here's the bread machine. You can look inside and see the bread inside. It turned out pretty nice. I'm going to unplug it. I'm going to grab it. I have this thing here I use. It's hot, so you got to have something to touch it with. And then I get on its side and I rotate a little bit back and forth the paddle. In fact, if you put a little oil on the paddle before you get started, it will help it separate easier. And then give it a few taps, it will come loose. Now you can see the paddle actually ended up in the bottom of the bread. Well, that happens sometimes. If you leave the bread in the bowl too long, it will get moisture in there and it comes out a little bit easier, but the bread doesn't taste as good. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use a big pin here to grab the thing. Depending on the bread maker you have, you can do this. And you can see that's coming out of there pretty easily. So you put a little vegetable oil or something on there ahead of time, it helps it release easier. I'll put that back in. And now this is the thing that I recommend doing. If you have just a kitchen towel, it would be better than paper towel. But I have this paper towel I use. What I'll do is just cover up the loaf and let it cool down. Just cover it up real good. And then it will sweat a little bit, so you don't want to smother it. And to avoid temptation of cutting into it and eating it too soon, I put it up out of reach of everyone. But that's all it takes to make bread. Enjoy.